idea that, or the fact that water boils at 212 degrees Fahrenheit at sea level, which corresponds to the factual truth that if I'm at sea level and I boil a pot of water, I could stick a thermometer in it and I'll get a reading of 212 degrees Fahrenheit when it boils. And so we then go to the philosopher, the prominent philosopher of 20th century, who started the analytic school of philosophy with Ludwig Wittgenstein, and his name is Bertrand Russell. He was born in 1872 and dies in 1970, and he had a correspondence theory of truth whereby he thought that for Russell, facts don't depend on us for their existence. They correspond to facts in the real world. And likewise, a belief we have corresponds to a fact in the real world. So correspondence theory has to do with the way in which we have a belief in what we know of as true that should also correspond to facts that exist in the world apart from our understanding of those facts. So in his 1912 book, Problems of Philosophy, he gives us this threefold understanding of how it is that we understand the truth. So number one, a theory that is true must be an admission to the possibility of being false. So any claim of truth also has to undergo any falsification that we could bring to it. And that also is tying into how it is that we're understanding the points that Karl Popper makes in terms of his falsification theory, in terms of scientific verification. So in other words, any claim of truth must stand up to the challenge of being falsified at the same time. As a matter of fact, that's a factor in terms of how it is that we're understanding the truth. So in other words, any truth claim must have a way in which we could challenge it to be possibly false at the same time. Then secondly, if there is no belief, then there's no falsehood either, and likewise, no truth. In other words, beliefs and statements of truth and falsehood are mutually dependent. So that is quite possibly one of the most important things that we're looking at in terms of truth that is frequently misunderstood. So in other words, when we're understanding the truth, we're not also recognizing how it is that we're understanding things that are false at the same time, along with our notions of truth. And that could also mean such weirdness as any claim of something that is false, or let's just say a lie, or being dishonest, also has a truth to it, in the sense that, like, for example, if you have to go to court to prove that someone is not telling you the truth or being dishonest, you have to prove that they were being dishonest. And that burden of proof to show that someone is being dishonest is a way of showing that there is a veracity to their dishonesty. In other words, that there's truth to the fact that they were being dishonest. And so, in other words, we don't often make that connection that something that is true also has a way in which we're understanding things that are false about that truth claim. Okay? And then, so 3, by extension, the truth or falsehood of a belief also depends on something that lies outside of that belief itself. So, in other words, that's the correspondence. And also, too, I should point out that given his second point there, that, in other words, if we're understanding things as true, we must also see things as false at the same time, along with that truth. There's also a correspondence there. In other words, truth and falsehood go hand in hand in terms of our understanding of what's true and likewise what's not true. That simultaneously also corresponds to the way in which we're looking at the principle of non-contradiction. In other words, something cannot both be true and not true at the same time. So that element of there being something that is true simultaneously cannot contradict itself by also claiming that it is not true. And so in that sense, you could see Russell's point here that truth and falsehood go hand in hand. And then so we're seeing with 3 that truth also depends on something that lies outside of our belief. And then so, i.e., the belief is true, the belief is a true or false statement that relies on, or better yet, corresponds to something in the real world, and not necessarily to the belief itself. And so Russell objects to coherentism in terms of this idea that beliefs are true if it coheres to a set of beliefs, in terms of a network or a web of belief that might be contending with each other in terms of how it is that we believe things. So therefore, coherentism is a way in which we're justifying belief in terms of that which is false, and then also verifying our beliefs by what lies outside of our beliefs in order to understand the truth. So I think I'm going to leave it there, and we'll talk about this more later. So thank you, and talk to you later.